Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi, which is Maseches Nazir Daf Memtes. We are actually holding on Memtes Amid Beis at the Mishnah, which is 4 lines from the top of the Amid. So we'll start at this Mishnah and Be'ezus Hashem move into Daf Nun and complete Daf Nun as well. So we'll sort of combine Memtes Amid Beis with Daf Nun. Now we all know that a Nazir must keep away from Tumah. What type of Tumah? Tumas Meis. So you can get involved in any other type of Tumah, but keep away from Tumas Meis, a deceased person. Now we all know that there are so many different levels of Tumah. There is the Avi Avoisa Tumah, the Meis himself. Then there's something that touched the Meis. That becomes the Ava Tumah. And then it carries over to the Rishon, the Tumah, and so on and so forth. A Nazir must keep away from any Tumah which associates, which identifies with a mace, whether it's the mace himself or Tumah derived from the mace. However, as the Rambam points out, when it comes to the halacha of tiglachas Tumah, which basically means that when the Nazir, who's not meant to become Tamei, becomes Tamei, he cancels everything that he already kept. Then he has to wait 7 days, during which he gets the hazah from the paradum on the 3rd day, on the 7th day, and then he does that tiglachas, he shaves his head, brings 3 karbanis, chatas oila and the asham, and then he's ready to restart the whole Nazirus anew. So this halacha, that his Tumah encounter will in fact cancel everything and facilitate and require the taglachas hatumah, that is unique to Tumas Meis itself. What does that mean? You have to actually get involved with the mace itself, with the original mace. So this mission will give us a very specific list of encounters which are considered associating with the mace itself. And the Rambam points out, because you see the pasuk, which speaks about the Nazir, becoming Tamei and canceling his entire Nazirus, specifies that we're speaking about a mace. Al nefesh mace lo yavai. It doesn't say, la nefesh lo yitama. It says al nefesh mace lo yavai, indicating this consequence, this tiglachas tumah, this cancellation of everything that he had already kept, only happens by way of encountering a mace itself, or other variations of the mace. For instance, a kazayis, basar of a mace. The Rambam points out that when a person is created, the first stage is a kazayis. That's the shear from which a person grows, gets created. So that too is considered sort of a microcosm of a person and qualifies as Tumas Meis regarding the Nazir being Megaleach upon encountering that Tumah. And likewise, everything on this list, everything that we mentioned in the Mishnah has that quality. It's considered significant enough. It's considered something which sort of represents the mace in a very real way, and encountering this material is tantamount to having gotten involved with a mace itself. Okay, says the Mishnah, Al elu tumois hanozir megaleach. As a result of the following encounters, the Nazir will have to go through the tiglachas hatumah process. Again, that means canceling everything that he has already done, wait 7 days, tvila, tiglachas, karbanis, and restart everything. Al elu tumois hanozir megaleach. Number 1, al hameis, well, the mace itself. Val kazayis min hameis, even a sheer kazayis, basar of that mace, triggers this process of tiglachas hatumah. Val kazayis netzal, that's a kazayis of liquid decomposure, liquidy form of a mace. Val malay tarvad rekev, or getting involved with a spoonful of decomposure material of the mace. We're talking about dry material rather than liquefied material. So again, this is a sheer which sort of represents the mace himself. In fact, the Yerushalmi brings that Adam Rishon was created min ha'adama from the earth, and Hashem used this shear, a malay tarvad, a spoonful, to create Adam Rishon. So in fact, this shear is fully representative of a potential person. Furthermore, ala shedra, touching a spine of a mace, al golgolos, a skull, al ever min a mace, or even just a small limb, but if it's a full limb which features all three elements, bone, flesh, and sinews, that qualifies and has the same result. Al ever min a chai, sheyesh alav basar karoi, or a limb from a living person. That's also metame, provided that this aver, and likewise the aver we mentioned a minute ago, the aver min ha-mace, has enough basar. What's basar karoi? Farshim explain that it's enough flesh that can technically, theoretically, cause a regeneration, can bring about healing to this aver. There's enough flesh there that can bring refuah to the makkah, if in fact this aver would have been, part of a person. So that gives the aver prominence and significance, and it's considered tum'as meis. Furthermore, val chatzi kavatzomis, a half a kav, a certain amount of bones of a meis, val chatzi lug dam, a half a lug of dam. So all these items, all these materials have the ability to transmit tumah through three channels. Al magon, by touching them, val mason, by carrying them, val ahilan, and by way of tumas oil. So either they hover over the person, or person hovers over them, or you're found under the same roof as these materials. So all these have very strong tumah. They can impart their tumah through maga, masa, and oil, as opposed to the next item, val etzav k's'oirav. The nazir touches a small bone chip the size of a grain of barley. So that is also considered a significantly sized bone, which qualifies as tumas meis, but it can only transmit tumah by way of maga and masa, al maga oil, al masa oil, by way of touching or carrying, but not by way of oil. It doesn't have that power. So the Mishnah summarizes the topic at hand. Al elu hanazir megaleach. So by encountering any of these materials, the nazir will have to shave his hair, and accept the sprinkle of the paraduma on the third and seventh day. And he cancels, destroys everything that he had already counted towards his nazirus, and he can't recount, can't start counting anew, until he brings his karbonates and becomes tar. We know Rameir was very, very deep Tana, and that was the style in his base medrash. He would delve very deeply into things. After Meir's passing, Rabbi Yehuda expected an influx of Talmidim coming from Meir to his yeshiva. So he told his Talmidim, don't let him in. Al yikansu Talmidei Rabbi Meir Lukan. Don't let Rabbi Meir's students into our base medrash. They're not for us. They have a different learning style than us. They're confrontational. They're not coming just to learn Torah. They're coming to give me a hard time. They're going to come give me a hard time, annoy me with their questions and their halachas and challenge me. So keep them out. I don't want to associate with them. What happened? Dachak Sumchus, one of the Talmidei Rameir, forced his way in. Somehow he managed to get into the Beis Medrash, v'nichnas. Omer lehem, and he gets up and he announces as follows: I have an interesting halacha to tell you, in the name of my Rebbe, Rabbi Meir. Kach shana li Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir taught me as follows in his Mishnah. He had this girsa like us. Al elu tumois hanozim galech. A nazir will have to do giluach by encountering any of these tumois, and he begins the list with the mace, ala mace, the mace itself, al kazayis manes, or kazayis from the mace. That was his presentation. Rabbi Yehuda was annoyed. Varmalani tells us, Talmidim, why'd you let him in here? Haven't I already told you? Don't let them in here. They're confrontational. They give me a hard time. Look, what kind of Mishnah, what kind of halach is he telling me? He's just confusing us. He mentioned two items: the mace himself and a kazayas of the mace. Well, once you mention the kazayas of a mace, well, of course, the mace himself. Why mention both? Al kazayas min hames megalech. If a nazir has to megalech upon encountering just a kazayas, a small portion of a mace, certainly, of course, al mace l'kolshken. Of course, is there any need to even mention the mace himself, who's so much bigger and more prominent than a kazayas? Of course, that has the same results. So why is he mentioning it? Just confusing us. Okay. Rabbi Yesi. So Rabbi Yesi, who was standing there, upon hearing this exchange, responded as follows. I have to step in. I have to clarify things. I have to try to set things straight. It's Torah. We have to understand it. Yomru. People will start saying, well, we're stuck. Meir Shachav, Rabbi Meir passed away, and he no longer can explain himself, right? Yehuda Kessler, Rabbi Yehuda is upset, and Yosi Shasak, Yosi, referring to himself, is just going to remain silent. So, people are going to walk away. Well, nobody to turn to. Rabbi Meir is not here. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't want to respond, and Yosi was Shasak. He just pleaded the fifth. He remained silent. Torah Matei, what's going to do with the Torah? We have to get to the bottom of it. We have to try to make an attempt to explain this halacha. It's a cryptic statement. Once you have the kazayas causing giluach, of course the mace himself, why the redundancy? So basically offered an explanation. There must be some catch to it. When we say mace has the ability to bring about this result, apparently we're speaking about a mace which has a disadvantage, which is very lacking. And the chiddush is that even this type of incomplete mace, so to speak, still has the power to bring about this consequence. What does this mean? Apparently we're speaking about a certain type of mace. It's a full mace. Let's say like a premature baby. It's a full mace, small size, with very little flesh. Doesn't even have a sheer kazayis basar. And that's a chiddush. So now we understand what Rameh had in mind. Al elu tumeis hanozim megalech, kazayis of a mace, and even a mace that doesn't have a kazayis, but he has enough prominence. He's a fully featured mace without the kazayis basar. That still qualifies and has the same result. Asks the Gemara, but it's still pretty obvious. You don't need a chiddush. V'adayin yomru, people will still say, what do you mean? Of course. Al ever mimenu megalech. The Mishnah tells us even one limb of a mace is megaleach. Al kuli l'koshken, of course, the entire mace. So of course it's obvious. There's no need to speak about it. Ella, says the Gemara, another attempt at explaining this halacha. What type of mace are we speaking about? A mace which is a full mace, but it's missing something very crucial, and it still is megaleach. It still has the same koyach. Elo Kadam Rabbi Yechon, just like Rabbi Yechon tells us in Mesechus Oles, we had a similar question there, where the Mishnah there speaks about things which are metame ba'oil, and it says kazayis min mace and mace itself. Same question. Once we know kazayis, of course mace. Rabbi Yechon over there tells us Kadam Rabbi Yechon lo nitzrucha. Apparently, we're speaking in the following case: Elo lenefel, a primi. So it wasn't fully developed yet, stillborn, miscarriage. It's a nafel, an unsuccessful, child, unsuccessful baby that does not yet have the gidim, the sinews, the veins. He has all the limbs, but he hadn't yet developed gidim. That's the chiddush, because usually a person is made up of three elements: atzamis, basar, and gidin. Those are three building blocks of a person's structure. And when we say that a aver min hameis is metame, it must feature these three elements. It has to have atzam, basar, and gidin. Then it's metame. And the chiddush here is that even if it doesn't have one of those elements, even if it's an undeveloped mace without gitim, but if it's a full mace, fully formed nafel, it's metame, and that's the chiddush. Okay, that's one way to learn. Rava Amar, I'll give you another way to learn. What's the word mace referring to? In the Mishnah we learned that a half a kava atzamis qualifies. What if there is no shear? She'ein ban reiv atzamis doesn't even have a quarter of a kav, but it stands very prominent in terms of the type of bones. It's reiv binyanai. The bones here represent, most of his structure in terms of his height. Two shakayim and a yarech. The Gemara says two thighs and a yarech and two shakayim is like a foot, and the yarech is one of the thighs. So basically, it's most of his skeleton, so to speak. That's reiv binyanai. Reiv binyanai is in terms of numbers, it's the majority of his bones. So 125 bones would be considered reiv binyanai. So even if you don't even have the shear of reiv atzamis, but you have bones which represent a significant, substantial part of this person, that is what the Mishnah means when it says mace. And that too is considered, that belongs on the list, and that will facilitate the giluach of the Nazir. Okay, so bottom line is we had a Mishnah giving us a list of tumas which cause the Nazir to be megaleach. The idea behind it is that the pasuk requires tumas mace itself, a mace or something which really identifies and represents the mace. And Mishnah mentions mace and kazayis min mace. The question is why? Once you know kazayis, of course the mace. We have two tirutzim: either a full mace but without gidin, or reiv binyana even without a shear of atzamis. What else do we have on the list? Al kazayis mace, al kazayis netzel, whether it's a kazayis of intact flesh or kazayis of liquefied flesh. Vezu netzel. What exactly is this netzel? Says the Gemara, Besar hamesh shakarash. The mace is flesh which liquefied and then congealed again. So we're going to see why we need it to congeal afterwards. Umayal shirtiach. Or you have mayal, which is sort of again liquefied mace material, which was boiled. So a person boiled it and came to a boil, then it qualifies as netzel. It's either the flesh itself, which underwent this process, or some liquid which was emitted by the mace, which was brought to a boiling point. Then it's considered mitami. What exactly are we speaking about? Ilema. So we know that the mace himself, the boss of the mace is mitame, but let's say saliva or liquid, which is not flesh related, that's not mitame. So when we find this liquid near a mace, we don't know where it's coming from. We don't know whether it's the actual basa which was liquefied, so it's mitame, or it's some other liquid from the mace which is not mitame. Ki koresh mayavi. So what's the point of what's the difference whether it got congealed or not? What is that? How does that help you? If we don't know that it's the basa or mace. Elo de yad inon de dedeyu. Oh, apparently it's coming from the basa. So then what do you need to congeal? Even if it's in its liquid form, it's still matami. We're speaking that as an unknown. So this is a test. This is a litmus test. This is how you determine where it's coming from. So if you have this liquefied material that then goes and hardens, it came from the basar. That's just the nature of things. That's what happens. It can get liquefied, and then ultimately it hardens again. Then it was basar and it's matami. That's kazayis netzel mentioned in the Mishnah. But loy karash. But if it doesn't harden again, then dilma, some take out the word dilma, kichay binehu, then you know that it's coming from other sources. It's kichay, is like saliva, phlegm, viniyai, liquid from his nose, or whatever. It's not it didn't originate in his flesh, and it's not metame. So basically, when you have liquid coming from a mace, and you see that it's korash, or in the case of here siach, which is another way of testing it, that you go and you cook it up and you boil it up and it actually bubbles up, then you know it's coming from basar, and it constitutes as kazayis netzel, which is metame. I have an interesting question. This halacha, that a kazayis of netzel is metame, which by the way is learned from halacha l'meishim Sinai. Tosfos points this out. All these shiurim are halacha l'meishim Sinai. When does this apply? Only to a person regarding tumas mace, or perhaps even to an avela, a dead animal? So you have this liquefied material coming from it. Perhaps it's also going to be metame, like an avela is metame. Yesh netzel behema. This netzel concept, that even liquefied material is metame, applies to a behema as well, or perhaps not. Mi amrina, shall we say, Gemiri, this halacha l'meishim Sinai, netzel da asmi adam is only by netzel, coming from a person. Aval da asmi behema, but from an animal it doesn't qualify. It's not metame. It loses its essence. It's not metame. No, perhaps it's no difference. Whether it's netzel from a adam or netzel from a behema, it still is considered a metame. Now the Gemara is assuming that netzel is no longer fit for consumption. So, why are we discussing netzel behema, whether it's metame? Well, once it's netzel, once it dissolves, it's apparently spoiled to the point that it loses its form. Of course, it's not edible. So this works according to the Shita, which says Tumah Chamura Ad Leger, that a dead animal, an avela, is only metame. We call it Tumah Chamura because it's metame by way of touching, by way of carrying, b'magu, b'masa. It only does so provided that it's fit for consumption. See, the pasuk says, take the avela and give it to the ger. We're talking about ger toishav, a guy who's just keeping the sheva mitzvahs. So you feed it to him, you offer it to him. Apparently, the nevela, for it to be considered a nevela and have all the elements of nevela, which is metame, it has to be something which is right for a ger, right for the feeding this guy. But if it's not fit for human consumption, it doesn't qualify. It loses its status. It loses its tumah. So according to that shita, tumah chamura ad leger, nevela is only metame, the severe tumah, if it's still fit for consumption. So in this case, it's not applicable because it's already liquefied and spoiled. V'tumah kala ad lekelev, right? There's another point that regarding tumas oichlan, a totally different topic. We know that food can become tummy, but it has to be edible. What is considered edibility? What's the threshold? It has to be roy, at least for a dog to eat. So that's it has its own threshold. So regarding tumah chamura, meaning tumas nevela, it depends on if it's fit for human consumption. Regarding tumas oichlin, that's a whole different topic. That depends on the achila of the kelev. Okay, we're going to focus on the first part. So tumas nevela is only applicable if it's edible, if it's fit for human consumption. Shaper. So if that's the case, then there's no question. Of course, if it's liquefied, if it's dissolved, if it's spoiled, it's not right for the ger, it's not right for the adam. Of course, it's not metam. There's no question. There's no point in discussing it. Question is, there's another shita. Even tumah chamura, the severe tumah of nevela, is still maintained unless this nevela is so spoiled it's not even fit for a kelev, for a dog. So we're assuming that netzel is still roy for the dog. So then theoretically it can still carry tumas nevela, but the question is, it's liquefied. Michael Amema, what would you say? That it's still maintained, it's still retain its tumas nevela, or do we say, well, changed forms, it loses its status? Tashma, here's a right. The Brisa says. Brisa is speaking about a nevela of a oif, tahar, a bird. And you take the fat or whatever, and you dissolve it. You cook it up, you heat it up, and you dissolve it. So is it still metame or not? Himchu ba'ur, if it was cooked up by way of fire, your conventional method of cooking, tame. It's not spoiled. There's nothing wrong with it. So it still retains its status. It's still tummy. But bechama, if it was heated up in the sun, so that's really spoiled. It it sits out there. It degenerates. It heats up and it gets liquefied. It's not really edible anymore. Bechama, it's tar. Okay. So what do we see from here? Now, if we're going with the idea that tumah is maintained in an item until it becomes unfit for dog's consumption, so the Gemara is assuming that even if it's heated by way of the chama, it's still roi lachilas kelev, afilu b'chama nami. So even in the case of heating by way of sun, it should still be matame. It's still roi lekelev. That's what we're thinking at this point. So why does the Mishnah say it's not matame? Apparently, because it's called neitzel. It's it degenerated, it lost its form, it dissolved, and therefore it's no longer considered an avela. And the Tosfos points out, himchu ba'ur, the ordinary cooking procedures doesn't have that same effect. It's not it's not spoiled, it doesn't degenerate. That's just he cooked it. That's fine. But when it's sitting out in the sun and it's sort of spoiled, it degenerates and changes forms, that is called neitzel. He calls it nirka v'nimcha mi'atzmei. If it just self-generates, that's called neitzel. That's spoilage to a certain extent. So the fact that the Brisa considers it to be tohar indicates that neitzel of a behemo, or in this case of an oif, does not carry the tumah of the original basar. That's a right. Our question. Neitzel only applies to a person, not another creature. Answers the Gemara, no. Perhaps theoretically, even liquefied basar would still carry the same tumah, tumas nevela, tumas oif tar. But when he's mamche b'chama, it's sitting out in the sun for a prolonged time, and prolonged period, just sits there and it warms and it spoils and it liquefies. I mean, that's really bad shape. It's not even roi for a kelev. That's why it's tar. So theoretically, liquefied basar would still be considered a metame. But now if it's so severely spoiled that it's no longer fit even for a dog's consumption. Okay, let's see the words in the Gemara. Eimas mamachile. When does it dissolve? Basar dasreach b'chama. Once it sits out in the sun and spoils, severely spoils. Well, even the asrach, once it gets to that point, havale offer, it's like earth, it's like offer. It's totally inedible, and it's not even roi for a kelev, and that explains why it's tar. So we really haven't resolved our question. When it comes to tumas meis of an adam, we learn from the halacha Moshe Messina, even liquefied basar is considered a metame. Sometimes we have a suffix where it's coming from, so we have to see if it boils, we have to see if it hardens. As we learned before, that's the way to test it. The question was regarding neitzel of a behem, or an oif tummy. Does it retain its original tumah or not? So if it's been heated up out in the sun, that's totally spoiled, it's not right for anything. Of course it's tar. If it was cooked bu'ur, by way of just ordinary fire, then of course it still retains its status, it's high quality material. The question was, suppose it just sits around and liquefies in that manner. That's the netzel that we're speaking about, and it's still roi for whoever has to be roi for, whether it's the kelev or whether it's the ger, according to the other shita. So it still has that minimum edibility, which is the requirement for tumah. Problem is, it lost its original form. It's liquefied. So what happens now? So we leave it unresolved. Continues the Gemara. Tanan. We have a Mishnah, Maseches Machshirin, which says like this: Kol hanitzig tar. Suppose you have a kli, which contains something which is tummy. Okay, you have a cereal which is tummy. Then you have another kli from which you're pouring into the tumah material, but your material that you're pouring is tar. That's called nitzig. When you pour, there's no connection, tar. So the material sitting in the kli being poured from does not get affected by the material on the bottom. the tumah doesn't sort of travel back up and conduct through the nitzok into the top kli. Except chutz midvash hazifim vatzapiches. So typically, liquid being poured from the upper kli to the lower kli would not serve as a connector, as a conductor of tumah back from the lower up to the upper. That's two separate entities, except for a substance which is, really gooey, like dvash hazifim. Tosfos brings a pshat based in the Gemara and Saita. Rabbi Yehuda says zifim means dvashim is zayfen oisai. Ziyuf means to forge. It was such high quality, thick honey that they would actually dilute it. They would just water it down before selling it. So this very gooey substance does serve as a connector, and likewise, tzapiches, according to one pshat, it means that glob of honey, with the honeycomb, it's just like really gooey with the wax. According to another pshat based on the aruch, it means like a honey, batter, honey cake batter. So these are very gooey and very thick, and they serve as a proper chibur. So if you're pouring this type of substance into a kli, which is tummy, the tumah sort of travels back. It's all one entity at this point. Beishami Oimrim, they add two more items. Af hamikpa shel grisen, a soup, a cereal made of half beans, v'shel pul, or full beans, basically like a chon. Meshi say ledas lachareah, because when you stop, when you pour and you suddenly stop, it's sort of so ledas lachareah means it jumps back at you. It has those strands, those gooey strands, which come back at you. So basically, whatever's touching the lower kli really is fully connected to the upper kli. In fact, you see that the strands come back. Okay, so according to Tanakama, we give exception to these two items, dvash and tzapiches, very thick substances. According to Beis Shammai, it applies to these items as well. These have the strands, which the Gemara soon will call riri. These little strands, which indicate a full connection. Boy Rami Bar Chama. What about a non-liquid? So up until now we spoke about liquids. What about something which is a non-liquid? Tosfos says you take shuman, you take a piece of fat, and you water and you liquefy it, and you pour that into food which is tummy. Boy Rami Bar Chama. What happens if you made a nitzuk out of oichlan? Yesh nitzuk lo oichlan, or a nitzuk lo oichlan? Do we apply this concept of chibur through a nitzuk, through a pouring? We apply it to food items as well, liquefied food, or not? Well, what's the question here? Shall we say the reason why honey, etc., is considered a connector is because of the riri, those strands, which come back at you when you stop pouring. That indicates a connection from bottom up. V'hani less riri, but the shuman, which we just discussed, doesn't have riri. So it's thick, but it doesn't have those, those extra strands which come back at you. Or perhaps the reason for honey is because of its thickness. That makes that conduct that connection. And shuman, which has been watered down, which had been liquefied, is also thick. So is it the thickness that makes the connection, or the strands, the riri, which jump back at you when you stop pouring? Amarava Tashma, I'll bring you a raya. We have a brayse. Chelev hames. So a kazais of mace material, which is matame. It's chelev. Okay, so it's fat. Shu shalim. It's a single entity, one piece of fat, totally connected. And he cooks it up. So now you have it in its liquid form. Tameh. It still will transmit tumah. Okay? Now, of course, it has to be one single entity. The kazais has to be intact in order for tumah to come out of it. You can't just take two pieces of chelev, put them together, okay, we have a kazais. It doesn't work like that. It has to be internally connected. It has to be one single entity. Still, by being matiachet, by cooking it up and liquefying it, it doesn't lose its singularity. It's still considered one entity. But if it started as pieces, and then he put it together, cooked it up together, turned it into sort of one glob, that's tar. End of Brisa. Now, this is oichel, right? Chelev is oichel. Is a concept of connection through pouring. Does not apply to food items. So then, in this case of shalom, you have a full piece of chelev v'tich, and he liquefied that piece, turned it into chelev in liquid form, which is sort of like a running substance right now. They're not connected. The various molecule elements, the various parts of this liquid glob, so to speak, is not really considered connected. It's like, otherwise it would be like a nitzik. Just like when you pour it from the upper to the lower, we don't consider that to be a connector. Here as well, when you turn it into liquid form, liquid is not considered connected. It's not one entity. So shalom, if you take a full piece of yitich and he liquefies it, nami litar, here as well, it should not be matame. So it would seem that, yes, the concept of chibur through nitzik, if it's a very thick substance like a piece of chelev, which had been liquefied, is considered a chibur, is considered a connection. It's one entity. Amar Abzera, perhaps not. Anna, myself, Umar Breid Ravina, and the other Amira, Targimna, we answered as follows. There's a way to explain it without the concept of connection through nitzik. Hachab my skin, you know what we're speaking about? Because as he threw it into the pot and it started cooking up this piece of chelev, you know what happened? It softened and turned into one glob. That's it. It never had time to sort of move around and separate. Salik amuda, they take out the word denura. Salik amuda. So the this entity, this liquid, this piece of chelev, which is actually softening and turning liquid, sort of jumped up through the heat of the fire, sort of pushed it up, pume the mana to the top of the pot. So it all came together as one. It never had a chance to float around and flow around and separate. Vikarash, and at that point it hardened. So it's all there together as one. It never had a chance to flow around and to float around and to separate. But perhaps, if it's really being poured, nitzik, just because it's a thick entity, perhaps it would not be considered a connector unless you have the riri concept, as we mentioned before. I'll bring your raya. We had the Mishnah before where Beishami was mentioned. They added a couple more items which qualify for the chibur of nitzuk. Beishami Eimrim Afhamik. B'shal Grisim shall pull these bean dishes. When you pour them from one to the other, they're considered connected because they come back at you. When you stop pouring, it sort of comes back at you like a spring. So what do we see? That the riri factor, the strand factor, is at play. That's what determines connection. And the Gemara figures at this point that the other shita, Tanakama, who spoke about dvash and sapiches, limited the halach of nitzuk to those two. It's also based on the riri concept. The only machlekes is that the Tanakama requires, a strong riri element, lots of strands coming back at you, which is, prevalent by honey and that, as opposed to the mikvah shel grisin, which doesn't have such a, pronounced riri element. Whereas Beishami say, well, even a minor riri element is enough, but something doesn't have this strand element, it wouldn't work. That's the Gemara at this point. So the, let's say the chelev, that doesn't have riri. It's just chelev in liquid form. Maybe it's thick, but once it pours down, it doesn't come back at you, and that wouldn't work. No, says the Gemara, the area. How would you prove from Beishami to the Tanakama? Perhaps that in itself is the machlekes. Tanakama discusses honey and things like that, which are smichen, which are thick, and that's all you need. So thickness is the criterion. And Meishami say, well, sometimes you don't have the thickness of that substance, but riri, that's good enough. So mikpah shel grisim shapul have the riri aspect, and that sort of substitutes for the lack of thickness. So perhaps thickness is a determinant factor. And chelev hames, which was hitichai, which has that smichi, that thickness to it, that would also qualify as a connector. Continues the Gemara. What else did we have on the list of tumais meis, which is mitame the nazir, etc.? V'amaloi tarvad rekev. He comes into contact with a spoonful of decomposure. V'kama shiuri. How big is this tarvad? We have to give a standard size for it. What type of spoon are we speaking about? Chizki amar maloi pisas hayad. This tarvad is a large size sort of serving spoon, which contains as much as one can contain in his palm, in the palm of his hand, not counting the finger area, just in the palm. Rabbi Yehuda, it's more than that. It's the palm and finger area as well. Tanan, we have a Mishnah, Malay Tarvad Rekev Shamru. How much fits into the Malay Tarvad? Yashtan mi'ikar atzbois olamala. Divrei Rav Meir. So the Gemara at this point figures that Rav Meir is describing only the finger area. So whatever could fit on your fingers. Ikar atzbois means where the fingers meet the palm, from that connecting area, till the tips of your fingers. So whatever's in the finger, that is considered the shear of Malay Tarvat Rekev. Whatever fits into the fingers, onto the fingers. The finger area with the palm area. So now, Rabbi Yehuda, so this works according to Rabbi Yehuda, who said, Malay Chafnav, who damak Rabbanon, okay, it fits with the Rabbanon, who likewise count in the fingers area as well as the palm. Ela Chizke, but Chizke who said only Mulei Pisas Hayad, only the palm area. Kiman, whose sheet is he following? You see, he's an Amoira. Hard to believe that he's arguing on Tanaim. He should match up with somebody. Well, over here it's Loik Rab Meir, but it doesn't work with Rab Meir, who said the fingers area, V'Loik Rabbanon, who spoke about palm and fingers. Amri, the answer is like this. You know what? Chizkiah's description of Malay Pisas Hayad and Rab Meir spoke about the finger area. It's all one and the same quantity. So they're describing different areas in the body, but in actuality, both areas hold the same, the same amount of material. Amalei Rav Shimon bar Ad Rav Papa. So Rav Shimon bar Ad asked Rav Papa, what's the question to begin with? I have a very simple answer to this question. You see, we had Shitas Rav Meir, who said, Me'ikar etzbois ulamala. Right? So we figured it means from the the knuckle area. Lamala means to the upper portion of the hand, the tips of the fingers, as if you're holding your fingers up. So you're going from the knuckles up to the top. So this did not work with either Chizkiah or Rabbi Yehuda, right? Perhaps that's not the pshat. Means l'roish etzba'is, going up to the tip of his fingers. So then it's inconsistent with Chizkiah or Rabbi Yehuda. Perhaps we go downward. Perhaps all he meant to say is you start where the fingers meet the palm and you go down. So when he said lamala, it means when you're holding your hand down and you're going back towards the body, that's upward. So instead of holding your hands up, and lamala means to the tips of your finger, hold your hands down. And it means from where the fingers meet the palm, upward towards the hand, which means the palm area. Which is perfectly consistent with Shitas Chizkiah. A palm fill of rekev is metame. And some take out the word teku. So basically, it's a simple answer to the question. Who's Chizkiah speaking according to which Shita? Is he going according to Shitas? Rabbi Yechon is following Shitas Rabbanan. Interestingly enough, I saw from the Tiferet Tzion a beautiful pshat in this machlekes. Just the palm, or the palm and the fingers. So he says that based on the Yerushalmi says that Hashem Yisbarach created Adam Rishon from the Afar from the Adama. How much Afar? Exactly this shear, a Maloi Tarva Direka. Now there's machlekes in the Gemara in Erevin that Hashem created Adam and Chava together as one and then separated them, or Adam himself and Chava herself. So the Shita that says that the shear is the full hand, the palm and the finger area, holds that Hashem created Adam separately, and that's how much was needed to create Adam. So that represents the shear which makes man. Whereas the other Shita holds that Hashem created Adam and Chava together. So he used this full amount to create two people. Then he separated them. So really, half that amount suffices for Brias Adam, and in this case you have the rekev of this shear that represents the essence of man. Okay, so what did we learn today? The Mishnah gave us a list of tumos, which will actually dictate to the Nazir that he must restart the Nazirus, Teglachas Tuma, Karbonos, etc. And the underlying point in the Sugi is, so explains the Rambam, it's not just the Tumah, it's the Ikar HaMeis, getting involved with the Meis himself. So whether it's the Meis or Kazayis Min HaMeis, etc., these are various aspects of Meis and Shiurim, various substances which are significant enough that they actually represent the full Meis. So it's not just the Tumah of the Meis, but it's a sort of a micro of the Meis himself, and as such he must be Megaleach and go through the whole process, Karbonos, etc. We had a question. Once you say Kazayis Min HaMeis, why mention Meis? That was the whole story. It was Rabbi Yehuda and Talmidei Reb Meir. Actually, it's interesting that Reb Meir was known as a chorf, a very sharp, falpil, and Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says, was a mason umasik. He was sort of more methodical and, I guess you could say slower moving in terms of his analytical abilities, but umasik. He would come out with such clarity that he would conclude with clarity al pi halacha. So two different perspectives to learning and two different mentalities. Rabbi Meir's yeshiva, Rabbi Yehuda's yeshiva. But in any case, Rabbi Yehuda could not sort of relate to Rabbi Meir's approach, and he said, locked him out of the Beis Medrash. Simcha somehow got in, presented the Girsa, which was difficult to understand. Why mention Meis once you have Kazayis Min HaMeis? The Gemara gave two reasons. Meis has extra significance, even if he's lacking certain basic elements. We discussed Kazayis of Neitzel, that liquefied Basar HaMeis. We learned about at what point does a tumah expire, once it's inedible to a ger or to the kelev. We discussed the idea of nitzaik, pouring liquid from one to the other. Is it a chibur in terms of tumah? Oh, it depends. When? Typically not, unless it's extra thick or it has those those strands which jump back at you. And we learned about the shear of Maloi Tarva Rekev, a shear of Chizkiah, Maloi Pisas Yad, and Kontra B'Yechnon, Maloi Chafnav. Psuras Toivus, all the best to you and Hatzlacha Rabbah.